Welcome to Mind the Gaps, a podcast filling in pop culture gaps one at a time. I'm your host, Jeremy. Everyone has that one movie, TV show, or book that they have never experienced, but it seems like everyone else has. For me, a pop culture enthusiast who has seen a lot of movies, watched a lot of TV, and read a lot of books, I still have many gaps to fill. What I hope to do with this show is fill my gaps in and hopefully entertain you with my insights, my observations, and realizations as I watch stuff that everyone else seems to have seen. Perhaps I'll bring along a friend or two down the road, but for now, it's just me, minding my own gaps. Before I embark, I have to establish at least one ground rule. For this, I will not watch anything considered new. Nothing before the year 2000 at the latest. I'll even try to avoid anything that came out before 1995, the year I graduated from high school. My reasoning for this rule is simple. If it's new, does it really have the time to become a classic? Anything less than 20 years old is still new, and most likely available frequently on cable reruns or streaming on Netflix or other services. So no matter how often someone tells me that a movie from after 9/11 is a classic, I will not watch and review it for this show. And now that I've gotten that out of the way, let me move on. This episode, I'll be watching the 1974 Mel Brooks classic, Young Frankenstein. And this is how I envision each show going, and as this is the pilot episode, I'll do my best to walk through my plans so that I don't confuse myself or my listeners in the future. Listen to me saying listeners, as if there's more than one or two of you out there. Anyway, I'll begin first by recalling everything I already know about the movies that I will experience for the first time just by absorption through pop culture osmosis. It's pretty easy to experience that in this day and age. It's difficult not to see jokes or performances that are homages to classics, so if I understand a recycled references from the source material, I'll make note of that in the intro. Now for Young Frankenstein, I actually know very little. I know it's a Mel Brooks parody of the classic Boris Karloff film, Frankenstein, aptly named. Anyway, starring the late Gene Wilder and Peter Boyle as the Doctor and his monster, respectively. I know that it's in black and white, which was less necessity and more of a stylistic choice in 1974. I also know that there is supposed to be an amazing and hilarious dance scene featuring the monster. And that's about it. From what I've read, this film is all of the Mel Brooks marks. I've only seen a couple of his films, so I can't say for sure, but I expect off-color jokes. Maybe not too many, I hope. And parody that's as goofy as it is respectful of the source material. I also know that, well, it's rated PG. It's a rating based on standards that are kinda old. Since it's prior to the PG-13 era, I'm cautious to watch it with my kids considering what the potential red flags are, so I've decided to embark on this particular journey on my own. With that, I'm going to take a break and watch the film. I'll take copious notes, and we'll come back in a matter of minutes in podcast time to break down Young Frankenstein.
Before we proceed.
I have one question, Dr. Frankenstein.
That's Frankenstein. Why, you mother-grabbing bastard! Give him an extra $1.
I'll count the hours that you're away.
Oh, darling, so will I.
Not on the lips.
Dr. Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
You're putting me on.
No, it's pronounced Frankenstein. You must be Igor.
No, it's pronounced Igor.
Oh, hello. Would you like to have a roll in the hay? It's fun. Roll, roll in the hay.
I am Frau Blucher.
Hand me that candle, will you? Put the candle back. Don't put the candle back.
I ain't got nobody, and nobody cares for me. Igor, Frederick.
His hands, his organs would all have to be increased in size.
Exactly.
He would have an enormous Schwanzstücke.
He's going to be very popular.
Give my creation life!
I think before we go around killing people, we had better make dance here of our evidence.
3 syllables. First syllable sounds like...
Head! Sounds like head! Bed! Said!
Said, give. Give him a said, give.
Said I give?
I'm going to set him free!
A visitor is all I ask.
Oh, you must have been the tallest one in your class.
In our preoccupation.
No matter what you hear in there, no matter how cruelly I beg you, do not open this door. Let me out. Let me out of here. Get me the hell out of here. From what was once an inarticulate mass of lifeless tissues, may I now present a cultured, sophisticated man about town. If you're blue and you don't know where to go to, why don't you go where fashion sits? Igor, would you give me a hand with the bags?
Certainly. You take the blonde and I'll take the one in the taven.
Is your room just down the hall in case I get the fright during the night?
You're incorrigible, aren't you? You little zipper neck.
Oh my God, it's the villagers!
I said put that man down!
Well, just who do you think you are that you order these people about?
I am the monster!
Yeah, I see that.
And now, let us all go to my house for a little sponge cake and a little wine and shit! To the lumberyard!
I put a special hamper in the bathroom just for your shirts, and the other one is just for socks and poo-poo undies.
The feeling is mutual. But what did you ever get from him?
All right, that was Young Frankenstein in 5 minutes, and that came from YouTube. I will post a link somewhere where you can find it. I apologize if there was anything in there that was slightly on the PG side. There was a couple of curse words here and there, and obviously some of the off-color jokes, double entendres, were included as well. And but I just don't have time to go back and cut things up and things like that. I wanted to put this episode out as quickly as I could. Anyway, I will get into Young Frankenstein in a minute. But first, I want to talk about, I watched that movie, and then I realized I hadn't seen the original Frankenstein. That's right, the 1931 Boris Karloff classic, Young Frankenstein, or Frankenstein. So what's great about the library system where I live is you can pretty much get most everything you want, movies and everything like that. And I got an entire Frankenstein collection. On my other podcast, I talked about Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which I watched with my sons. And they also included in that set Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Son of Frankenstein. I think there's one more, but I don't have the disc in front of me to tell you exactly what everything is on there. Oh, I think Frankenstein meets Dracula or whatever. So I watched the original Frankenstein first, or not first, but after I had seen Young Frankenstein, just to kind of get a feel for what exactly Mel Brooks was going for when it came to parodying this particular genre or this particular film or story. And I was amazed at a lot of things, including, but not limited to, what follows in this minor review. First of all, it was super short. It was only an hour and 10 minutes. And it told a complete story. Started at the beginning of the action, followed the typical arc, hit a climax, and then finished. And it was a very enjoyable story to watch and experience, and I'll probably watch it again. What is interesting is it opens up with a man in front of a curtain warning the viewer that it was going to be frightening and shocking. And I'm sure it was back in 1931 to watch a movie of this magnitude in a theater, which I thought was kind of interesting. I liked that. And I loved how it said that it was about a man creating a man in his own image, which, of course, if you believe in the Bible or anything like that, if you believe in the Bible, it says that God created man in his own image. So the Bible says that God created man in his own image, right? And this movie, right on the outset, says that it's about a man trying to create a man in his own image. And I have not read the novel. It's one of those classic novels that I've never actually picked up and read. I think I've started reading it here and there when I was younger, and I just never really picked it up. And then they made a play out of it, which shocked me. I didn't know they had a play about Frankenstein. And then it was made into a movie. And in the beginning, in the opening credits, they actually don't credit Boris Karloff. And I think maybe because he had done a few films and he was sort of known, maybe not super famous, they wanted to keep the air of mystery about who the monster was and what he might have looked like. And they didn't credit him in the beginning. They put question marks next to the monster. I thought that was kind of neat. And one thing that really stuck out to me about this film, and it's probably something true about all films of the era, is that they did so much with so little. The sets were very, very simple. The set pieces were very simple. They did a lot with just a little bit of, like, the cemetery scenes. It just had, like, a fog around, and it was just a small, small area they were shooting in. They did so much with so little, and I really, really dug that. And one thing also, and maybe it's just me acting like an old man, but which I do often, by the way. People who know me know that I kind of act like an old man, especially when I start complaining about stuff. I adore the lack of irony in the performances, and it's one thing that's lacking in modern television and acting and modern films, is that there's so much irony in how people act. You know, everybody's like winking at the camera, or they do everything sarcastically, especially in comedy. Irony is almost the crutch for bad performances. There's been a few, gems recently or in the last, 10, 15 years that have been performances that lack irony. Like Will Ferrell in Elf, I think, is one of those all-in actors performances. There's no irony in him at all. He's not winking at the camera. He is Buddy the Elf. Same thing is true with this film. The actors become the characters, and there's no irony in their performances. It's a little theatrical. It obviously it feels like a play because it's only got a few set pieces here and there, and it really kind of takes you back and makes you appreciate what they do as actors, particularly actor that played Frankenstein, Boris Karloff, or not the Frankenstein's monster, Boris Karloff. And I try not to apply too much philosophy when I watch films or read a story, but I find myself doing it a lot. In particular, there's a moment where the monster sees the light and he's like reaching up towards it and he's like drawn to it, and they decided to dim the lights, right? And then I think it was the Igor character. His name wasn't Igor. I didn't even catch his name. I apologize, I didn't write it on my notes. But he comes in with a torch, and immediately the monster freaks out at the fire. And I grew up watching SNL, especially the cast, including Phil Hartman, who did a great Frankenstein's monster, where he'd go, fire bad, fire bad. Well, and obviously you know that Frankenstein is not a fan of fire, hates fire. It's become part of the mythology of Frankenstein is that he hates fire. And when you go back to how the monster was created, the assistant was tasked with getting a brain for Henry Frankenstein, the doctor, to get him a brain for the creature. And instead of the perfectly normal brain that he had the option of taking, he dropped on the floor. He took the abnormal brain of a criminal. And this is a dead person, right? Who's brought back to life. And he's drawn to the light because the light, I think, could represent heaven, right? And the fire, which freaks the monster out, represents where the monster was before he was brought back to life, which is hell. And I thought that was an interesting dynamic that wasn't explored a